Welcome to the Serious TV Drama Podcast. I'm Scott, and joining me this week for the latest edition of the greatest TV drama episodes of all time, the walk of punishment to my walk of shame, 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 and the hot pie to my hot take, and the oath breaker to my oath faker. Hey, it's Pat. Hey, Pat.
Hey there. Hey, Scott.
You should feel honored. I mean, it's bad. I mean, I've rarely done the little comparison intro for these, except done it once. That's the first time I've done like 3 things.
No, I was impressed. I liked all of that.
Oh, good Lord. You should see the list of other things I had, which some of which are better, but I said, do I want to start off the podcast with something dirty? Maybe, it's an explicit podcast. Curse words are allowed here, but I used to give Dan a hard time when we were barely a minute in and he would drop an F-bomb. It's like, could you have at least let people give themselves a chance to settle in here? Anyway. So yes, we are joined by Pat. Pat, you, as I mentioned in both Facebook and tweet and wherever else, I consider you probably one of the foremost experts on the show we will be discussing this evening. And plus one of my all-time favorite podcasts that was ever done under our little STVD heading here is when you and I decided to discuss Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I guess that must have been 2016. I'm thinking.
It was some time ago, and I know we really tried our best to approach it very positively.
Yes. But
it
didn't quite work out.
There's only so much you can do. So
yeah, I was talking about it recently, and I said, we went into it with the whole plan of like, everyone's dumping on this movie. We're both fans of the genre, fans of these characters. We're going to come in and defend it. And I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but if I had a guess of a roughly 2-hour podcast, probably an hour and 40 odd minutes of it were probably negative.
Yeah,
anyway. Yeah. There's some really pretty looking shots in it, Anyway, but unlike that, we are actually here to step up one more rung on, as I said, the greatest TV drama episodes of all time. Countdown. We have reached number 9, which is the Rains of Castamere, the penultimate. Yeah, there it is. Can you do like a little soundboard effect for me?
just me going. So,
see, if I did that, people would just say, "Why is Scott sighing again?" As most, if not everybody who's listening knows, it's the penultimate episode of the 3rd season of Game of Thrones. The Red Wedding episode. Now, before we tear the lid off this simmering to a boil conversation, as I'm sure it will be at one point, let me do my little disclaimer thing here first. As I've said before, and I'm going to be saying this right up until the end of this countdown, this does not represent my personal pick or picks. It's basically data and research driven, pulling together selections and rankings done by numerous articles and websites over the past several years. Put that together, weeded out the episodes that had already been extensively covered on this podcast. I honed it down to 1 episode per series. Bing, bang, boom. There you have it. There is your countdown. Now, this is usually the part of the podcast where I get into a little bit of the history and backstory of the series that's going to be discussed. And I gotta say, this is gonna be maybe one of the only times I'm gonna feel downright silly doing that, with Sir Pat over here. I think it's kind of like asking Nuke LaLoosh from Bull Durham to lead a conversation on how to throw a baseball, and he's sitting next to like Sandy Koufax or Nolan Ryan or something.
No. I'm sure that your opinion and your recollection of the show and the background is going to be completely valid, and I will respect and agree with whatever you're saying.
Well, it's going to be about as bare bones as it gets, because I think between that and plus the awareness that most, if not everybody listening, y'all pretty much know this stuff already. Yep. Narrowing it down to the essentials so we can get to the actual conversing here. So here we go. Basically, Game of Thrones. It ran on HBO from 2011 to 2019. It racked up a total of 73 episodes over the course of 8 seasons. And it was funny when I was just putting this together, I'd almost forgotten, oh yeah, it's because those last 2 seasons were super short.
Yep.
Which might have been an issue, which we will talk about soon. As most, if not everybody knows, it was based on the Song of Ice and Fire series of books that were written by the so slow George R.R. Martin, and the series was created and led by David. This will be the first of many names I predict I will be mispronouncing tonight. David Benioff.
Benioff.
Oh, thank God. And D.B. Weiss. Watch his Wise. No, just kidding. Benioff. And here's something folks might not know. Benioff's career actually started off as a novelist. In fact, he finished his first acclaimed novel, The 25th Hour, while he was working towards his master's degree in college. So I hate him already. As some may recognize, that title is actually subsequently adapted for a major motion picture by Spike Lee. That's the one with Ed Norton. It's actually a pretty good movie. The world of film clearly attracted Benioff, and then he made his bones as a screenwriter on a few more productions, which we won't get into. Troy. Oof. Until finally collaborating with D.B. Weiss, who had actually worked as a personal assistant in the entertainment business for a while before meeting Benioff, and then directing his energies towards screenwriting as well. Yada, yada, yada. They worked together to bring Game of Thrones to we call it the small screen, although a lot of people have these 80-inch TVs, so I don't know if that's valid anymore. So I don't know if I even want to bother nutshelling what Game of Thrones is about. I should have told you in advance. Hey, Pat, could you do up a micro story?
I mean, I think people either they know what it's about or they won't care, and they'll just listen to us talk about it anyway.
Right.
But I mean, usually it was back when it was pitched as kind of like The Sopranos plus Lord of the Rings, which is kind of like reductive and wrong. But it is a fantasy story with all these kind of like political and adventure elements that have like a real kind of like a real realism, if you know what I mean by that. But it's also really heavy into like subverting the tropes of fantasy. So it's almost like the anti-fantasy.
Huh. Or a fantasy.
It is a fantasy.
Antifa?
But
no.
right. Yes. I am all in on this now. Right on.
Yeah, they can be blamed for this too now.
Oh, Jesus. Yes.
Hey, now we feel better about the 8th season. So, oh boy. So let me ask you, this is I'm going to start off with an extremely silly question, most likely. Do you consider, Game of Thrones, do you just view it as taking place in some sort of alternate universe? Because, you got these continents, Westeros and Essos, which I don't really see them as versions of European or North American landmasses, but maybe they are. I mean, so can we just imagine it? Well, this isn't even actually Earth or it's alternate Earth, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I have had friends who had like this revelation that like, oh, did you realize that it's not taking place on Earth? I'm like, well, yeah, I know it's not taking place on Earth. It's just not. So sure. I mean, like it's kind of like when we're watching the updated Battlestar Galactica and everyone is wearing like suits and ties, and it's like, well, hold on, they're like an alien civilization. Why are they wearing suits and ties? It's like, well, it's an aesthetic. It's the way it is. And so they're, George R. R. Martin wanted to write a fantasy novel. It often takes place on worlds that are not Earth, but are also not like a space planet that we could like fly to or something. Right. It's its own little kind of fantasy space where things are happening. But yeah.
That's why I kind of look at it as, I mean, thank God for DC over the years. I just look at it as an alternate Earth. Where that's where this happened. Just like, in the DC universe, here's an Earth where there were only villains and, Lex Luthor's the only hero, that kind of thing. They just take it to a more extreme measure. But yeah, like any other fantasy series, whether it be the aforementioned Lord of the Rings or whatever else, it kind of takes place on something that's like an Earth, but it's not this Earth. And, and with Anyway, see, I start going way off track. That's where I start fumbling. Let me get myself back here.
Sure.
I want to make it clear, if I haven't already, to any possible new listeners, because there may be a few fellow Game of Thrones enthusiasts who've clicked the link, mainly to hear you and hear what this
Sure.
and they're like, what does this other schmuck have to say? Okay, from the get-go, I would not ever call myself an expert on the series. I was a fan.
Yeah.
Now personally, I've watched every episode. I think I've actually rewatched every episode. And there's certainly even a few I've watched more than twice. But I am not that well versed in this world as the more ardent fans. So, as I also said at the top, the odds are pretty good. I'm going to mispronounce as well as forget any number of names as we get into our discussion. If you guys want to make it into a drinking game, feel free, but this might be one where you're going to be in double digits of your shots before we even hit the hour mark.
Well, I'm here for you. It's okay. So
yes.
if you get a name wrong, I'll either correct you or I won't correct you because it doesn't really matter. It's okay in a lot of cases.
It will be one of the few instances I won't mind being corrected that much on the podcast. Now, you and I know over the years we've talked about the series every once in a while. Not to any great extent, but a little bit here and there. And I think back in the day, the conversations were often typically framed as book reader to non-book reader. Because, obviously the book reader's perspective was bound to different, especially through the first 4 seasons. Yeah, go on.
Just to follow along what you're saying is because it was an adaptation, and particularly in the early seasons, it was a very faithful adaptation to the books. So a book reader would be watching it, to kind of like judge the quality of the adaptation, and also, as book readers do, talk about, well, that guy doesn't look the way I imagine, or they omitted this like incredibly trivial detail that is super important for no good reason, that type of stuff.
Right.
So yeah, those are usually the book reader type of conversations where there's a lot of, lording it over the show watcher.
Oh yeah, which I always thought was amusing when I would get into those conversations. I mean, fortunately for everyone involved, actually really liked those first 4 seasons, so there wasn't usually a lot of, negativity on the non-book viewers, book readers.
Right.
I'm more of a book viewer. I just view them from across the room. Like, I'll read them eventually. Hey, again, another one of those silly, nonsensical questions. As far as the books in the series, did it really stop at the end of season 4, or were there things that maybe bled into season 5 as well?
There are some things in season 5 that happened, and there were some things in season 5 that were kind of like approximating. I mean, like clearly, I think that the showrunners were after season 4 were trying to like get to like an end game, and so they were deciding what they felt they could kind of like carry on with and what they were going to kind of jettison. And so season 5 began like some kind of deviations, but there still was elements from the books in season 5. The deal was that the first 3 books are pretty much well represented in the first 4 seasons of the show. And then of the 2 remaining books, like bits were taken out of the 2 remaining books that have been published to kind of like fill in what the showrunners kind of like created for themselves to kind of like push towards some kind of an ending. And then season 6 through 8 was based on like a lot of like vague stuff they got from George, who was still kind of like making it up as he went along, and them kind of being forced to like not have any material, but yet also wanting to like wrap everything up.
Right. Yeah, which is, it's an interesting situation they found themselves in because, obviously there's been any number of shows where, okay, we have to start charting out these last couple seasons, whatever, because we have to come up with an ending here, or they know what the ending is and they have to, okay, well, now we have to work towards that ending, which in my experience, more often than not is the way a writer works. Like, you know your goal, your destination. Okay, how are we getting there?
Right.
Especially as we get to that, that final section. See, I was curious because, I did have it in my mind that they were continuing to at least consult when they could with Double R there.
Yeah.
Because I was like going, okay, so who's responsible for dreaming up the stuff in like Arya's misadventures in Bravos, or Cersei with the Sparrows, or Jorah and Tyrion together, and that kind of, or Sansa continuing the unluckiest relationship streak ever.
Yeah. Sansa, unfortunately, her storyline that George might have for her in the books was kind of jettisoned. Although she's probably going to end up doing a lot of things that were like in the later seasons, but she ended up falling into the role of like a minor character who ends up being married off to Ramsay, and that was rough. I mean, that was really rough in season 5 for people who had like a real connection with Sansa's book character and did not want to see anything bad happen to her, and that began like a lot of fan issues with the showrunners, and I don't want to say the showrunners are blameless individuals. I just don't blame them as much as perhaps some people do in the fandom.
Well, I on one hand, I certainly don't want or expect the podcast to get bogged down in even like my personal issues with the series after season 4. But on the other hand, I realized there was a precedent I set myself in this very countdown, because if you go all the way back to almost near the beginning of the countdown, when one of the episodes we were covering was an episode of Dexter,
right?
I did spend a little chunk of time talking about how I thought that series basically fell off a cliff after season 4.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying I think that's what the case was with Game of Thrones. I'm not going to say it fell off a cliff. That would be a wild exaggeration. But for me, starting with season 5, and I'm starting with season, because there are still a lot of people who hold season 5 in fairly high regard. That was the first season where I started to have major issues with any storylines. I mean, I just rewatched season 3, which I remember for the podcast, of course. And I remember back in the day when I watched it, or last time I rewatched it, it was a bit of a slog watching, Theon be tortured episode after episode. And they're not even short scenes. They go on, some of them go on really excruciatingly long. You people were whining about Sawyer and the cages on Lost. Oh, please. But watching it again, I'm not going to say I enjoyed them more exactly, but I maybe they just worked better for me, or maybe I'm not sure. Maybe there's a lot of stuff that I'm rewatching over the course of this countdown. I'm kind of revisiting, and my opinions are changing to a certain extent, for the positive for the most part. A few negative, but mostly positive. But when I think of season 5, what I mentioned a few moments ago, I kind of felt the Arya stuff, and I obviously love the character of Arya, but I felt the stuff with her and the House of Black and White and blah, 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 felt a little endless to me. I was like, oh, come on. I mean, it reminds me of, this is me going off on a track, so it just came to my head, so we'll see if this goes anywhere.
No problem.
Okay. It kind of, and I'm realizing it even was done in a film, Batman Begins. I want to watch Batman. I want to watch, how, and I am interested in why Bruce Wayne becomes Batman, whatever. But you know what? I don't need to spend an hour, a half of a movie watching him train to become Batman. You know what? You can Rocky 3 that crap and put it in a montage for me, and I'll be fine with it. I don't need to spend that much time with it. And I really love that movie, so I'm kind of being glib here. It didn't actually, in that movie, it didn't bother me, because, hey, look, it's Liam Neeson. Hey, and if Liam Neeson had been in this, I probably wouldn't have minded as much either, quite frankly. He would have taught her, a certain set of skills.
Right.
But, but even if I got past that, then the Cersei thing. I believe, and if there's anyone who can correct me, it would be you. I believe in an earlier episode, I think there's a moment where Tywin says that she's not as smart as she thinks she is, right?
Right.
And I feel like season 5 must have been, proof positive of that, because at the time, I couldn't believe that she could not foresee how bad a plan it was to empower the Sparrows as she does in season 5. And I kept thinking, she's smarter than this, and she usually sees, a few moves ahead, and then I realized, like, well, maybe she doesn't, maybe she's letting her emotions get the better of you because she's so against it, Marjorie and the gang, whatever. I don't know, but I remember it bothering me a lot in that season.
Yeah, the Cersei stuff from season 5 it is one of those parts that are from the books mostly, and this is a situation that the show always had to kind of wrangle with, is that a lot of what goes on in the books is really well informed by the internal workings of the point of view characters, because we actually get Cersei's mindset, and you see her make tremendous mistakes, and she really thinks she is doing everything like fourth dimensional chess smart, and you're just like, wow, what a train wreck she is, because she really is like out of her depth for it. So they didn't have like a really good way to kind of like ground us in like why Cersei is doing things without her like, having like some kind of like monologue and so that just wasn't going to work out. So I'm not surprised that the Cersei stuff in season 5 did not work for you. Whereas it kind of worked for me because it was approximating what I was expecting from the books. I
mean, even as I'm thinking about it now, because I'm trying to, again, I'm not here to bash the show or the character, because I'm a fan of both, and I'm thinking about it, and my way of, because I can always counterpoint my own arguments. It's just the way I'm built. With that Cersei thing, I guess I can explain it away by thinking that she kind of went a bit off the rails, as far as she ever does, when Joffrey died. And she was so fixated on blaming Tyrion and whatever, even though there were certain things, any number of reasons for not to think that way. But she became so obsessed with that. I think a lot of her judgment from that point on becomes clouded, because then, obviously subsequently, then her father is killed by him. So that only builds it up more. It's like, oh, it's almost proof positive of that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, season 6 definitely rebounds, from season 5. Even though I'm not that big a fan of Battle of the Bastards the way many others are. I think a lot of it looks very not, its cinematography is very interesting and nice, and I just didn't love it the way other people did. Maybe if I rewatched it, maybe I would love it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think it's from season 7 on, that's where they really felt the need to accelerate the stories, and that's where my reference to the shorter seasons comes into play. I can't help but wonder if, they had the normal complement of episodes per season, the normal 10, maybe the story and the structure for those 2 seasons would have worked out better. Even if we would have gotten some of the same things to happen, if they were built up to better, it would have worked better.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. My feeling is that even season 6 kind of had like a heavy streamlining of storylines, even if it had a full season run. I kind of felt that they were starting to do some things in season 5 that they got like a lot of heat for, and rather than kind of like pushing on with what they had in mind, they just like quickly cut it. Like, for example, they started, there's a Dorne subplot in the books where things are happening in Dorne, and Prince Doran has like a ton of family members, and they're scheming and so on. Well, the show is not going to go that way, so they kind of presented a smaller set of what was going on, and the fan reaction to that was so hot that immediately at the start of season 6, they just assassinated Prince Doran, just boom, like removed it as a whole storyline of what was going on, and his son just killed, and I thought, I think that this was done in a reaction of like, if we're going to do something on our own, we don't have to be ambitious about it because people are going to hate it. So we'll just be very simple, and we'll ignore everything except for some like the very like focused storylines that we want to pay attention to. Now season 6 was kind of rough for me for that, but season 7 and season 8 was where they just said, every single plot element that's happening, like Pat Spinagle is going to be okay with, but there's no connective tissue whatsoever to kind of like ground all those plot points. Mm-hmm. And you can just tell they just like rush from place to place, and like,
right.
Like, oh man.
Well, it's interesting that, I think one of the main, I can't even call it a theme. It's just the way the story has been told throughout the first four seasons plus, whatever. Just to take something which is very simple, it takes time to get from place to place because because Game of Thrones, probably more so than any other television series that comes to mind outside of, as to make sure that has Trek in the title, maybe. It's about the journey, literally the journey, as opposed to just, the journey of a character. It's like, no, everyone's on journeys. Everyone's, trying, they're trying to get past the wall or here or there or this land. She's trying to get from across the sea and they're all on journeys that take place over the course of entire seasons or multiple seasons. And all of a sudden, you get to, like, I guess it was season 7 than anything. What used to take multiple episodes of an entire season, all of a sudden, zip, zap, zoop, how the hell did all these guys get beyond the wall from where they started so damn fast? It's these, I know it sounds silly, but it's those little leaps in logic, at least Game of Thrones logic, which are kind of like, okay. And I kept thinking, okay, it's a fantasy, just go along with it, who cares? But part of me is like, no, because you created a set of rules for me that you were following pretty rigidly, even for a while there. And now you've changed the rules. And even if it sounds like a minor thing, I think it affects everything else because it affects the way you're telling the story overall. And that's why things felt either rushed or truncated. At least, what we've been talking about here.
Sure.
Season 8. Well, okay. Look, we actually covered every episode of season 8 on this podcast, so we don't really necessarily need to go down that rabbit hole of a season. I know from your Twitter feed, and you are like the king of Twitter. Oh my God. I know that you've defended it. And I'm not saying that I hated it.
No, it's okay. The things that I tend to defend, like, for example, I'll agree with you that man, that show was rushed. And if you want to complain about like the pacing or like elements that don't make sense because of like this kind of like chronology and like the rules of things, I think that's fine. I think it's totally fine. It's when people just say like, oh, it makes no sense that a character did this. And I'm like, well, or maybe you don't understand the character the way the character does. I mean, it's kind of like sometimes when you're presented with facts on a show, you can't say this fact is wrong. Yeah, and it's like, well, like you can certainly say like, I don't see like the reasons why he might do it. But if somebody says, well, there's this line of dialogue that he says this, and at the time we didn't really pull out thought into it. But if you consider what he said, knowing like where he ends up, you kind of see, and you start kind of like putting in like some missing pieces that might be there. It doesn't have to be that true, but it's kind of like, this is how I headcanon it. And then they say like, no, you're wrong. That character would never do that thing that they just did. And it's like, well, what can I say? What can I say?
Yeah, that's a tough one when people, and I've been involved in maybe not so much specifically about Game of Thrones, but just in general. I've had those conversations or arguments about would a character say something or not say something, in a given instance, a given scene, whatever. And it really depends on, obviously it's perspective. You're infusing it with your own point of view, since we were talking superhero movies before. It's like me complaining about Jonathan Kent in Man of Steel and how he speaks to his son and what he tells him. And my thing is, it's not even so much, maybe the character in the way it's depicted in this film would say that.
Right.
My issue is I've seen many years worth of comic books and even live action depictions of this character, and not one of them would ever say that. That goes against what this character has represented for the history of Superman, and now you're having him say this, which I actually found borderline offensive to hear come out of Jonathan Kent's mouth, quite frankly, which is weird. But yeah, that's actually one of my top two things I hate, I despise about that movie. And I actually like the movie overall. Oh, but I hate that. So
yeah.
Getting back to Game of Thrones, which is what we should be talking about. I can kind of see what you're saying. I mean, I feel if it was someone who was also, actually, this might be where the book readers come into play a little bit, where they've read the books and they're watching the live action depiction here, and then suddenly something veers off, and it doesn't seem to be based on what we've built up to at that point. One could say that. Whether that actually happens in the series, I think that's just a question of debate. I mean, I know the big one everyone talks about, and I know it's one of your favorite little things to go with people about, like, is she the Mad Queen now or not?
I have strong opinions on that.
I know.
Well, the thing is that people usually say, like, I can't believe they had her go crazy hysterical and just like lost her mind and burned the city. It's like, or she made like a political calculation because she had to like really demonstrate that it didn't matter how strong anybody else's claim was. She had the dragon and she was willing to use it. And it's like, we can debate if she made a rational decision to do something or if she's just like wonko crazy, but wonko crazy is not interesting. Whereas somebody who's otherwise pretty good choosing to do something that's like heinous because it meets their political goal, it's interesting to me, but it's okay.
No, that's totally valid. I think my issue with that, for example, came down to in the moment and right down to a practically lip curling in anger at Cersei from, dozens of miles away, whatever. And part of it was going, she's the one you're mad at. You're going to kill all the people that she doesn't care about. Other than you can be like, oh, look what I can do. Well, you're on a fucking dragon. She already knows. You're not going to be like, oh, wait, dragons can burn things? Oh, shit, I didn't see that coming. Come on.
Yeah.
But, kill all the people that I've already demonstrated that I could care less about. Whereas, I just wanted her to fly the dragon right up to the fucking window. Hey, first off, Bobby. And I wanted that face off. That would have been kind of cool, but whatever.
Yeah, but see, the deal is it fits in with the whole idea that George is writing a story that does not give you what you want, and in particular,
correct. That's true.
In particular, he's like, here's the Aragorn archetype, and both Jon and Daenerys both follow this Aragorn archetype, and neither one of them end up ruling Middle Earth wisely and having a nice tax policy. Instead, the crippled kid gets the throne. And I'm not like super fond of how the show gave Bran the crown, but I'm okay with Bran as King Bran. I'm okay with that because it's kind of unexpected, but I wish the show had like taken the time to kind of make me believe that Tyrion would go, you know what? It would be good for us to put this little Stark kid on the throne and have like a compelling argument other than who's got the best story. End of story. It's like, come on.
Especially Tyrion. When did you hear his whole story? When did that happen?
It happened at one point when he's up in Winterfell and he said, "Hey, Bran, why don't you talk to me for a minute about something?" And they cut away.
Right.
So apparently Bran gave him an amazing story that we did not see on screen. There's lots of stuff going on, but
because Bran has already proven himself to be a masterful storyteller before that. He's such a magnetic speaker. Speaking of which, I'm sorry.
Sure.
I don't want to.
No, let's move on. We're fine.
Yeah, I wasn't, honestly, I wasn't even going to touch the Bran thing. Wasn't even going to touch it. I'm just, because I'm just like, whatever. Because that was going to be one of those, the funny thing about that, I felt, was you're almost in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, because there's going to be some faction who's going to be like, oh, it's not the person I was pulling for.
Sure.
And the thing is, I felt like the Bran thing was, Well, because there are real reasons why it shouldn't be this person or that person, and
Right.
just logically speaking, once again. So I mean, I didn't have a massive issue with that. But I think my feeling was kind of like what you just said. I just think it should have been presented or just handled in a better fashion than, hey, who's got the best story? That guy.
It's kind of like, there's the faction that really wanted to see Jon on the throne, and there's the faction of the fans I'm talking about, and there's a faction of the fans that were really heavily invested in Daenerys on the throne.
Right.
And it's like we know if we put Jon on the throne, it'll really piss off the Dany fans.
Yeah.
We put Dany on the phone, the Jon fans are gonna be really angry about that. Let's just put neither of them on the throne and let everyone be angry, and then Bran is the great uniter by having everybody be angry.
That's true. He's, he turns out to be the Biden anyway.
Oh yeah.
It's funny how you're just illustrating it by you got the fans of Jon and you got the fans of Daenerys, whatever. See, walking everything back several steps or even a few seasons. For me, one of the major problems with the series in those final seasons, couple seasons, whatever, and maybe this goes all the way back to a gamble that they took way back when they cast the series. And and obviously when they're casting the series way back when, maybe they didn't anticipate where the series would go, because, they hadn't got that far in the books, but they probably could have guessed it, because a lot of people kind of figured that was something like that along those lines was eventually going to happen. The problem is the relationship between Jon Snow and Daenerys, and I'm not getting into the whole incest this or blah, blah, blah. I don't care about that.
For sure.
I don't care.
Right.
The show's built on incest anyway. That doesn't bother me.
Right.
It's because, it's more the problem is there's just a lack of palpable chemistry between those two. And that's what really, for me, hurt those scenes and just took me out of it. And so if I never can really get on board and believe these two are falling for each other to begin with, then their whole storyline and arc never really works for me, because I'm always kind of like, all right. Because this is a show that there's so much great chemistry between certain characters throughout the show. It's so clear that there isn't between these two. And anyone who says otherwise, I'm going to say you're wrong. Because you can't.
Yeah, I mean, they're both really attractive people, but I agree with you. Like the chemistry between Kit Harington and Rose Leslie, which we got to see some of that in the episode that we're eventually going to be talking about. It was solid, so solid that they got married.
Right.
But yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, it's kind of like when Jon and Dany were doing stuff in the later seasons. Intellectually, I was fine with okay, well, these two hot people are going to have sex, because why wouldn't they? But emotionally, I agree with you. There's they're okay. They have a real kind of like friendliness to them rather than hot and heavy sexiness to them. So it probably worked against it.
I think for previous things, and using Kit Harington and Rose Leslie's chemistry is obviously probably one of the best examples, because they did end up, getting married in real life, oddly enough. It's something, but you could feel the tension with those characters, and you could, and it's like, oh, this really makes sense, whatever. When you watch Jon and Daenerys, I felt like, well, this is what the story dictates, even though if it just doesn't feel that way on screen. It's like, they become more like pieces we're moving in a puzzle. Like, well, this is what has to happen in order for the story to go in this direction. Whereas it felt forced. It's basically what they usually. Anyway, putting it all that aside. And, let's look. From the long night on, I just felt there were just a lot of disappointing missteps. And I felt a lot of the resulting excuses that were made sometimes could be as bad as what people, including myself, put myself on the chopping block as well. It's kind of the way a lot of us labor to excuse or explain away a lot of things about the final season, or even the last final 15 minutes of the show Lost. And I always say, if a show requires you to work that hard to explain something or explain away something, then there's a flaw in the show itself. That's just the way I see it.
And the showrunners for Game of Thrones, bless their hearts. They were hard workers and they were good at organizing stuff, but they should never have spoken like on HBO, like on demand, there would be like the behind the scenes with the creators, and they would have those two guys, and they sounded like the two biggest idiots who had like not even watched the episode that they had seen, and I was just always like, is this a problem of editing? Like, what's going on? Because they would just give like the most shallowest type of thing, and I thought, dudes, don't explain your reasoning, because there is a fan base out there, like I'm one of those guys, who will justify what has just happened and make it sound good, and people will go, oh, that's really interesting, and all those guys would do is come out and say, oh yeah, Danny forgot about the Iron Fleet, but the Iron Fleet didn't forget about them, and it's like, oh, wow, that is so reductive and dumb, oh my god. And then and you can't defend it. I mean, like there's no way you can defend that at that point.
That's why what they should have done, they should have adopted, I mean, they should have looked back in the history of the HBO family. You should have like, hey, you know what? Take a page from David Chase's book. David Chase didn't want to talk to nobody. When the show ended, like, nope, I'm not saying anything about it. Nope, don't ask me. He eventually did a little bit here and there, but still not that much. Gilligan will talk, he'll do his interview with Alan Sepinwall right after, or he'll do a few things, but usually, don't put yourself out there to that extent, because you're bound to lose. It just don't bother.
And Vince Gilligan in particular was good, because people would ask him questions about things going on in Breaking Bad, and he would say, I believe that Walt was probably thinking about this. And the best thing about that is he was saying, what I'm about to tell you is not necessarily like canon. You can come up with your own conclusion. Right. It's just one perspective that I have. And I thought, I mean, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it.
And what I like about doing it that way is because again, and sometimes folks forget this because we're watching a story unfold, be it in a film or a TV show or whatever. It's still to whatever extent a work of art. And what is it about art? It's up to the viewer or the, whatever, to interpret it as they see fit. And so like for a character like say a Walter White or a Cersei Lannister or whomever, if we're not given their internal monologue, if we're not able to have, because it's not in book form, whatever, then we can only fill in that blank ourselves and what they may or may not be thinking. And then basically it's based on the quality of the writing and the quality of the performance. And both shows, can't say anything negative about the performances. And the writing, well, you know how I feel about Breaking Bad already. Game of Thrones, generally speaking, I would speak highly of, except for what we've just already spoken about. And, there's a lot of reasons for that. I would have felt a bit of a fraud if we didn't talk about it, because the rest of this podcast is going to be pretty darn positive about Game of Thrones. So we took the medicine first. Now we can get into, but now we can get to dessert.
Sure. Okay.
So we got plenty of time just to make up for it. We can confine this because I just binged season basically to prepare for the podcast. I watched the very first episode again, because I've made sure with every show that I'm watching, it doesn't matter if the episode falls in the first season or the fifth season, whatever. I always choose to watch the very first episode again, because I want to see how did it start. And also, in my mind, I'm also ranking all the pilots as I go through them. But then I zip from that directly to watching all of season 3 again. So I have season 3 in the head. My memory as far as the other seasons might be a bit more foggy, but it's pretty good. So keeping things, now we're going to get more light and basic here after all of that.
Sure.
And even though these might be basic questions, I don't actually know them as far as you're concerned, and I've never talked about them myself. So like what I just did with Jack on the Deadwood podcast, we're kind of talking about the characters, because one benchmark of a series like a Deadwood or like a Game of Thrones, the strength of the show is pretty much analogous to the strength of the characters, and the breadth of characters, how many there are, and how good they are, how fully realized they are, how different they are from each other, and so on. This has the additional caveat, and I would ask you, because you're being a book reader, see, I'm going to keep bringing that up now. I was always curious how much, at least in those first 4 seasons, how much these characters were But did they differ that much? I mean, did you feel there were times? I mean, I know there were going to be instances where, maybe the show didn't depict this aspect of a character well, or where they left this out. But I was wondering, are there characters that the series might have actually improved on, or if there's any, or characters that you might feel the opposite about?
I think that what we would consider like the major characters were all very well realized from the book. So it's not like I think that the characters like the major named characters were perhaps like improved on or really belittled too much. Generally, the secondary characters, it was like a 50-50. Like for example, one of my favorite characters from the show is Bronn the Sellsword, who backs up Tyrion most of the time, just because that actor really gave him life. I mean, really, like he leaps out from the page onto the screen with like so much more depth and just like fun. I mean, like I almost consider Bronn like a major character compared to being like the secondary, tertiary type role that he had in the books. Whereas I mentioned the Dorne subplot earlier. The actress Indira Varma played Ilaria Sand, and she's different in the books, and and it's one of the reasons that people were angry about season 5 is that they had this fondness for the secondary character who took the death of Prince Oberyn much more accepting. She saw no reason for vengeance because it wouldn't bring him back, whereas on the show she was just this like two-dimensional angry vengeance villain type character. So usually the main characters were all just like straight from the books, but the secondary characters is where you would see like either improvements or not an improvement of characters.
That makes sense because you get more of a canvas to work with, so you can really start pumping up the secondary or tertiary characters, and quite often they become the more memorable ones. Again, not to say that the main ones aren't, but it's just like, ooh, because the question I would then slide over to, just in keeping it basic, is just overall, like, who are your favorite characters? And by the way, neither of us should be allowed to say Tyrion.
No, it's okay because generally I feel that most people will say either Arya, Tyrion, Daenerys, or Jon, and so I always disqualify them if I'm asking somebody like, "Hey, who's your favorite character?" Except for those four.
Yeah, I agree.
So I generally say if someone asks me who's my favorite character, I would probably say Sir Davos, the Onion Knight, because I just like him so much. Mm-hmm. And I feel with Ned Stark dead. I look for like who's like the super decent guy, and so I gravitate towards Davos, who I feel has like a good moral compass.
Right.
And if you ask me, and again, I'm always a secondary character type guy. So I've already mentioned that I like Bronn a lot, but I also like Grey Worm a lot. I think Grey Worm, for a stoic character who says very little, I appreciated the performance of that actor, and I just really liked him. I mean, I thought it was the Unsullied in general are like these like child soldiers who are like forced into war, and I appreciate this type of aspect about them that they weren't merciless killers. they just had a really bad scenario and they're only good at killing. So I like to pull them up. I like to pull Grey Worm up and say, I like Grey Worm. I would like to know more about Grey Worm or what was going on with him, because he didn't get like a lot of good internal monologue for us to understand what was going on with him.
Right. I think for me, I mean, again, I also, play the game where I exclude those main characters. For me, I just okay, don't include Tyrion, because it was like what I was talking again. I'm mirroring the Deadwood podcast in a certain extent. I have a similar, and I said no, and let's not say Al Swearingen, because that's like asking who's your favorite Batman character. Oh, the Joker. No, you can't do that. No, that's be a bit more interesting. Yeah. So with Game of Thrones, especially because, for me, and again, this is indicative of any long-running series and the quality of it, there's the characters that I love from the get-go, and there's the characters that I grew to love, the characters that evolved, the characters that maybe didn't really evolve, but it didn't matter because it wasn't the nature of the character to evolve.
Sure.
My favorite, or the ones I got the biggest kick out of, look, I love all the members of the small council from the start. I don't know if it's just because they get the best lines, they're the most devious, the most deviant, or whatever, or just,
sure.
and they're so different in styles, don't be afraid of first if I mispronunciations here. You have, what is it? It's Lord Varys, Baelish, and then you have, even though he's so easy to hate, he's just a great character, the Grand Maester Pycelle.
Pycelle, yeah.
All their scenes, every time they're in a scene, it's already a gold star scene for me. Because it's just I'm gonna be rooted to the screen. I'm probably gonna laugh at something or smile about something. So that's like the number one thing in my mind. Once I get past that, then there's the likable from the get-go start characters, like of course Sir Davos, great character. Tormund kind of falls in that category.
Yep.
Brienne, I guess, might fall into that category.
Wonderful character. Yeah.
And then finally, I look at the characters that kind of grew on me, because to whatever minor or major extent, they definitely evolved and changed over the course of time. There's two that come to mind over pretty much everyone else. Because I'm not including Arya because she's also growing up, so it's not really, that's a different kind of evolving.
Is one of them Podrick?
No, it's not Podrick. I don't want to get into things growing in Podrick. I just watched season 3. It's funny because when I went back and watched it, when that scene comes up with when he's with the ladies,
right.
I was trying to remembering because I had forgotten. I thought it was about him having and then when later on it's like it's not about that, and it's the mystery of what it is. It's like, oh, that's actually more interesting. It's not just that. Not going to be staring at his pants all the time.
I always maintained that Podrick said, "Hey, do you have any laundry? I'll be happy to do laundry for you." And they were so happy that he would and he would braid their hair and hear their problems. It had nothing sexual whatsoever. That's my headcanon for Podrick.
Well, I just when you've got a name like Podrick, where you can find multiple words for something in that name.
Yep.
But we're going to move on from that. But the characters I think that evolved and changed the most and just grew to be characters I think myself and probably most, if not all, viewers grew to love. You got to go with Jaime, and you got to go with the Hound. Because they're characters that when you first meet them, they're just set up as just pretty much villain characters. Whatever. One's a bit of a smartass, one's kind of a grump. But they do so much with those characters over the course of these 8 seasons. If you were just starting the show, could you imagine rooting that? See that Hound character? You're going to be rooting for him when the series is over. Probably.
I tell you. No, keep going.
No, and the same with Jaime. If you see the first episode, when obviously he just casually pushes Bran out the window. And I wish they had the song playing. The things we do for love. Right. That's got to be a video somewhere on YouTube, I'm sure it is.
See, Jaime was such a spectacular character also in the books because, we don't get his point of view into the 3rd book. And people will often cite reading the books and getting to the Red Wedding, which we'll talk about at some point, and then being so angry, and throwing the book across the room. Well, I threw the book across the room when I read the 3rd book, but it was when Jaime had his hand cut off. And I was so angry because I didn't like Jaime. I wanted him to pay for what he did to Bran. But while I was reading his point of view chapters, I somehow got seduced by him, and I was rooting for him without even realizing it. And then when he had his hand cut off, I was so outraged that they cut his hand off. And I was like, no, why should I feel like this? So it was surprising that Jaime snuck up on me, and charmed me with his ways. So
it's great storytelling, and Jaime's character. I've been pushing for that guy to join the MCU. Anyway, all right. Since you dropped one more hint about it, which felt like a bit of a sarcastic nudge, let's get to what we are here to talk about, which is the Rains of Castamere. Rains of Castamere, which was written by, the 2 creators, Benioff and Weiss, so don't need to go through their bio. And it was directed by David Nutter, which is really interesting because I actually talked about him at great length when we reached number 14 on this countdown, because he was the director of the X-Files episode Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose.
Great episode.
And on that podcast, I talked about I went to great lengths to talk about it, so I'm not going to do it now. But in the TV world, David Nutter, I said he might be the king of successful TV pilots because he's directed, you wouldn't believe the list of number of shows he directed the pilot of that went on to be shows, not just pilots that just failed. And he's like, CW must love him because Supernatural, Arrow, Flash, Smallville. It's like he basically directed every other show, or at least kicked it off. It's just which you wouldn't think when you watch Game of Thrones. Like, hey, this guy did the Flash, man. All right, so now that we're here to the episode, now I'm gonna try to recap as pretty much everything about this episode, but we're gonna try to make a slight adjustment here. I'm gonna chop up the episode a little bit, kind of do it Pulp Fiction style. Need that little guitar, Dick Dale guitar going right now. So I'm gonna I have all these great ideas for sounds, and I don't actually incorporate them into the podcast. It's just too much trouble. I'm going to try to group the storyline scenes together wherever possible, while taking into account that at some point, most, if not all of them, converge. Obviously, there's one that really doesn't. And I think it's also one of the really remarkable things about this episode that might have otherwise gone unnoticed. So as we talk about it, that'll become more clear. So I'll do my little recappy thing, and the king of Twitter, the Radish Knight and the king of Twitter here will jump in as he sees fit. So we start off with I'll just call it hey, that's no wizard, it's Sam and Gilly.
Right.
He's fresh off his slaying of a White Walker, and they're still making their way to Castle Black. Actually, now their plan is to make it to Nightfort, which apparently is a closer castle beyond the wall. And Gilly, she's so amazed by Sam's ability to, read and retain knowledge. She likens him to a wizard, as if we needed another indication of the sheltered and limited life she's led up to this point.
Sure. Right.
So, I like that because it's it's kind of a little bit of comedy while giving us a little character and plot there. It's like, I'm guessing you're like a big Sam fan.
No, I am a Sam fan. I like him a lot, and this was like a nice part of the episode because of all the other parts of the episode. Like bad things are kind of happening, but Sam and Gilly have just escaped from the White Walker, and they're heading towards safety, which is always like a better goal than like running away from danger per se.
Right.
But what's nice is and we'll get more into this when we talk more about the episode. But the episode is chock full of like betrayals, and Sam and Gilly's storyline is from this massive betrayal up at Craster's Keep, where the Night's Watch had. They were there seeking shelter. They broke guest right already by killing Craster, and having a mutiny. And it's not really like talked about too much, but it's like a precursor of like what's going to be happening at the end of the episode.
Yep.
Has already kind of happened at Craster's Keep in a sense. In that there's like a guest right breaking, where the guests murder the host instead of the other way around.
Right.
That we get to at the twins. But it's a nice, like, charming part of the episode because Gilly is charmed by Sam's knowledge, and and Sam is all like, oh, this girl likes me because I'm smart, and it's like yeah,
Exactly.
like who is not going to like be charmed by this whole situation going on,
right? And of course we'll see them meet Bran in the next episode, but for now we got to switch over to one of Sam's other brothers on the watch, who's also Bran's brother.
Yep.
It's what I call John and Where the Wildlings Are. You see what I did?
I see it.
See what I did there? All right.
That was good. I recognize.
You're either gonna, people out there, you're either gonna get it, you're not gonna. Anyone who doesn't get it is like, duh. All right. So John and the Wildlings have come across a farmhouse where there's an old man and 8 horses, and the plan, despite John's objections, is to kill the old man and take the horses. But as they're, charging to the house, John clangs his sword against a stone as, to alert the horses and the old man.
Yeah.
And then he mounts a horse to get away, and just as, Egret is about to put an arrow through the old guy, John distracts her and she misses.
Right.
So it's funny how you mentioned the betrayal thing. All right, here's the first of the mini betrayals for John that are going to build up through his storyline in this episode. It's a little one,
Right.
and this is where and of course, this is where we're starting to get into one of those converging storylines. So then you got to switch tracks to the Bran train. Hey, switch tracks, Bran train. Anyway, it's still slowly pushing forward, because you're dealing with wheeling a kid in a wheelbarrow. What do you expect? At this point, I'd actually, when I was watching the episode, I have to admit, I'd almost forgotten. Wait, are they still trying to get to the wall now? Or are they trying to get to the three-eyed raven? And I was like, I think it's the raven. They clarify it. It is the raven. But I just remember just forgetting when I was watching it. Anyway, there's a storm coming. So they got inside the shelter for a bit at an abandoned and fairly decrepit windmill, I believe. And I remember thinking, hey, is this the same windmill that Egret thought was a castle in a previous episode? And I'm thinking, could be. That'd be kind of interesting. They keep pointing to the same windmill.
Right.
But later at that windmill, the Bran Brigade is discussing how they're going to get past the wall, and it turns out their plans kind of mirror Sam's. If maybe they'd be a lot closer if they were maybe better read. I don't know, but then Hodor, who's apparently he's frightened of the thunder. He's like a little poodle puppy or something. They spot some riders outside, and hey, look, storyline's converging. Bang! It's Jon and the Wildlings, but they don't know that yet. But as they're trying to quiet Hodor down, Bran unexpectedly wargs into him, which renders the big lug unconscious. And as their direwolves are outside and near the hubbub that's going on amongst the wildlings, is it Jojen? Is that how you pronounce it? Yes, Jojen. It's got
Yeah, Jojen, right.
How else would you pronounce that?
Yeah.
Insists that Bran can and should warg into one of the direwolves, I guess it would be Summer, to know what's going on down there. So, I'll pause here. Again, rewatching season 3, the storyline of Bran, and also it's always interesting when you're watching something and you know where it's going to be going because you've already seen the show, so it's a rewatch. You get to it's like looking at it with fresh eyes because now where you see where things are going, it's like you kind of can view it differently. It's like, oh, this makes more sense now, or this works better now, or oh, maybe they should have done something different. I'm kind of enjoying the Bran stuff more now than I remembered before. And maybe it's because I already know where it's going, so I can kind of enjoy it. Does that make sense? I mean,
well, it makes sense to me because now, when you watch the Bran scene where he wargs Hodor, you can't help but think of Hodor being warged and holding the door against the Whites, seasons later,
yep.
Where he dies. And, and that was quite a dramatic moment, and so it's hard not to feel some kind of emotion that this is the beginning of Hodor's death. Really, Bran is going to discover this magical ability that he can also warg Hodor, and it won't be good for Hodor.
No, it's not a good thing for him. It's good for us because it's fun. Anyway.
Yeah.
Because I like death. Anyway, so meanwhile, we see that this is where Jon and the Wildlings have caught up to that old man from the farmhouse. And after Orell points out that Jon should be the one to kill the old dude because, prove your allegiance to us.
And Orell is a giant penis, and it's it's like, do you have to be such a big dick, Orell? Yes, he does.
Well, that actor has made a career because I always know him from the original Office. Isn't he like the Dwight Schrute character? I can't remember what his name is on the British one, but basically an asshole. So Jon, obviously he can't do it. And after Egret, does slay the oldie with an arrow to the heart, the party's over and Jon faces off against the wildlings. But, boo, look at this. He's aided by the wolves, one of which, is Bran, I guess. So, hey, brothers fighting side by side, I guess. And as he kills Orell, the goggle-eyed goofball, he does kind of his little warging of his own, and all of a sudden he's in eagle form, and he even attacking Jon. It made me think of that scene, that little clip we always see of with Trump and the eagle. Anyway,
it's a perfect. Oh man, what a good reference.
There should be a video of those two things back to back. The eagle attacks Jon before it flies away. Jon saddles up and he rides off, leaving Tormund and a presumably heartbroken but definitely seething Egret there behind. So, it was. You knew this little alliance had to be busted apart eventually. So there was not exactly a shocker here. The shocking thing is that they let it go on as long as they did, because they knew full well he wasn't one of them. Come on. He never does it. Oh, okay, he killed one guy.
Yeah, and again, some storylines I think they did well in their adaptation, but I think John North of the Wall was perhaps not super well served. And you're right. This is one of those cases where you have to the show is telling us that Mance Rayder thinks, oh, you killed the half hand, I guess you'll be okay as a wildling. And no matter how much torment is it's like, yeah, I don't trust you, but we'll bring you along. The show is telling you have to kind of accept this. And it's like, okay. And you know what? I don't even know if it feels super well done in the books either. I think people are not really well invested in John's storyline in the books during this time until later on. But
okay.
But yeah. I mean, I think the stuff with Ygritte and John works in both media, but a lot of the show is because I think they have really good chemistry, and in the books,
right.
It just works better. Yeah.
I think this is actually an instance where whether it be the likability or just how much we enjoy the characters is almost superseding the story and plotting. So the stuff specifically between John and Ygritte, plus Tormund is presented as a really fun character. And it's the writing, it's the actors, everything. And they're what takes up a lot of those scenes. And even Orell, he's so easy to hate.
Yeah.
But when you put a character in those scenes, it's so it will obscure the issues that you were just mentioning because, oh, I really hate that guy, but I really like that guy. It's kind of fun to have these pinballing off each other, even though if you take a step back, oh, does this really work as well as it should? It's like, yeah, and then you start worrying, am I nitpicking or not? I'm not sure.
Right.
But you're willing to let it go because there's enough good stuff in those scenes just on an enjoyment level, even if it doesn't necessarily work in a plot logic or storyline way.
Sure.
So later, Bran tells, I'm gonna say Rickon.
Rickon,
that when he had walked into summer, he actually saw John and what had happened with the wildlings. And despite Osha's objections, Jojen's visions and Bran's Hodor hosting experience have firmly committed him to tracking down that three-eyed raven. See, now I know. So,
right.
But he wants Osha to take Rickon and Shaggy Dog.
Shaggy
I had
Dog.
no idea that's the other direwolf. I didn't know his name was Shaggy Dog until that moment. I'm like, wait, one of them is named Shaggy Dog? Is he actually Shaggy?
Well, sure, but it's the name that Rickon, who was in the books, is even named his wolf. And when you're reading the books, you're like, of course that little kid named.
Yeah, okay, that makes perfect
Shaggy
sense
Dog.
then. Okay, the more I think about it, I just thought it was funny.
Yeah.
He wants them to take him to the last hearth, which is where they'll be safe with the Umbers, some other people who have allegiance to the Starks and so on. And just like that, they make their goodbyes and they leave.
Yeah. And again, even that is kind of like a rough scene, knowing what we know, because Rickon and Osha are going to go to the Umbers and they'll be there for a little while, but then the political situation in the North will flip, and the Umbers will, in the show, will ally with the Boltons, which will lead to Osha being killed by Ramsay and then Rickon being killed by Ramsay. So it's another betrayal on the horizon.
Oh, this show. All right, so now we're going to make the opening credit sequence, and we're going to travel across the sea. We're going from one storyline to one storyline that really will not be converging with any of the others, at least not anytime soon. So I say we're going to head over to what I call Camp Khaleesi. and this is where we find oh boy, let's try this one. Dario Naharis.
Good. Yeah, perfect. Right on.
Wow. Is leading the I'm taking my own drinks from when I get them right. Is leading the strategy session to invade, and one might say conquer, one might say liberate the city of Yunkai.
Right.
Jorah clearly suspicious, doesn't quite trust him. He's obviously not the guy's biggest fan. To me, I just felt like, oh, is this another one in a long line of your semi-cuckolded experiences?
Poor Jorah. It's like Jorah's it's like, oh, why does she have to date these like good-looking young guys? Why?
Jorah's like he's like the curly-haired kid in My So-Called Life. He has to stand there watching the young better-looking guys end up with the girl he's got the crush on. Anyway, but Grey Worm actually does trust the dude, so therefore the plan is set.
Right.
That night, they put the plan into action. Dario is initially being kind of an arrogant smarty pants, dismissing Jorah's concern that there might be others beyond the two guards Dario has already dispatched. But boom, right on time, a slew of other soldiers appear to take on the trio. Despite the fact that they're clearly outnumbered, they kill all the guards, and then, oh look, even more show up.
Yep.
So, I one of the things I kind of will always enjoy about Game of Thrones, and I love when they do this. I love when they create these little motley crews. It's just I hate to use the Lord of the Rings thing, but it's kind of like, the odd grouping, the Dirty Dozen kind of thing, or in this case,
sure.
The Terrible Trio. I don't know, but these are three very different sort of guys in every which way. Not everything from the weapons they wield to their personalities to their ethnicities.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely not a 1-to-1, but it has that feel of like, since you mentioned Lord of the Rings, of like, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, and now those three guys were solid, and they all liked each other, except that Legolas and Gimli had this kind of antipathy going on as well, and it doesn't translate to Jorah and Dario and Grey Worm, but there is this kind of like, as you said, this mismatch of guys and ethnicities, with a common goal. Being the Dirty Dozen squad.
I love that. Or, if we went to our normal superhero paths, and I'm actually very impressed that I predicted that this podcast, we'd end up spending half of it having a DC/Marvel conversation. We have not done that, so I'm very impressed. Maybe that'll be a podcast this summer, who knows? But it kind of, but also, that's also the tradition of great teams, whether it be, your more famous ones like your X-Men's or Fantastic Fours, or your better ones like the Doom Patrol. That's right, I said better. Anyway, so back at Camp Khaleesi. Look at that, I just got a shot in, then I'll go right back. Back at Camp Khaleesi. Daenerys is getting antsy waiting while Sir Barristan, he's perfected the art of the shrug, apparently.
Right.
He's like,
I mean, it's just like, she's so impatient, and she's like, it's taking a long time, and Barristan's like, well, how long should it take to take a city? I mean, like, how can you answer that question?
It's like, don't worry, in a couple seasons, this won't be an issue at all. You're gonna be like, wow.
10 will be taken in one episode.
There you go. So the trio does show up. They're a little bloody, but it doesn't appear to be their blood, and they are victorious. So one might guess, at least in this point in the episode, in the season, etc., that the Second Sons and who knows how many of the former slave soldiers of Yunkai will be joining her forces. We will see what happens at the end of the next episode, but we're not talking about that one. We're talking about this one. So let's Dragon Express back to Westeros, and we're going to see what's going on. Oh, my favorite. My favorite odd couple outside of Felix and Oscar. It's the Hound and Arya.
Yes.
They just make me so happy. They happen upon a man who's trying to reset the wheel on a cart of food supplies that he's taking to the twins. The castles for House Fry and such. The Hound assists, then he conks the guy and is about to kill him, but then Arya successfully pleads for the man's life. Of course, right after the Hound says, you're very kind, it's going to kill you someday, the guy starts to come to, and then Arya gives him, a crack across the head to knock him out. And I just love the expression on the Hound's face, because as always, it's just priceless. I mean, throughout the series, at least throughout the first 4 seasons of the series, maybe another one of my issues from seasons 5 on, I love the interesting combinations that happen with Arya.
Right.
This
Right.
obviously might be the best one because they're taking that journey together, and they start out one way and it goes another way. I remember in an earlier season, and you know probably where I'm going with this, my favorite things about that season, I guess it was season 2, and correct me if I'm wrong about that one, Arya and Tywin.
Yes. No. At Harrenhal when she was
Yeah.
his cupbearer. Yeah.
So, the stuff between them, you get, not to mention, you get probably one of, if not the youngest member, probably the youngest major cast member on the show, and one of the most acclaimed, whatever you want to say. Charles Dance has a very long history of film, stage, everything, and having those two play off each other, I just loved it. Those makes me happy just thinking about it.
And it's notable because that was stuff that is not from the books. That was all invented for the show because they had to rejigger some of Arya's storyline to fit into the season. And, it just shows that even though the later seasons were not super well written, they had the opportunity to write some really compelling stuff, and they did early on.
Well, absolutely. I mean, look, I would never knock them as being right because they've clearly done a lot of great writing on their own as far as, scenes and characters and dialogue any number of times. It's just, as we spoke before, in terms of just the overall structure and where they ended up going and how it was handled, maybe could have been better. I'm not going to dump on them the way some do. And again, we podcasted that whole season. It's a fun podcast. You should listen to it. Anyway, so later, because it was me, Jamie, Brian. I think Dan appeared a couple times and then he just bailed out on us.
Because you guys probably weren't hating as much as you should have been or something.
Yeah, we could be, but he was really funny. If I'm not mistaken, I think the gal that I was with at the time, and still friends with, I think she might have actually appeared on the podcast on one of them, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
That was, Anyway, so later, I should not have mentioned it. Anyway, so later when the twins are just off in the distance, I'm going to edit that later, they have a lovely, friendly little chat. The Hound recognizes the fear in Arya's eyes, how she's so close, but fearful to how it can all go wrong.
Right.
And, oh boy, so she has no idea. And Arya counters with how she saw the Hound is frightened of fire. Oh, he's like the Martian Manhunter. So, so that little light bit of bonding, pretty much closes with how Arya declaring how she's going to put in a sword through the Hound's eye someday. And right there, I wanted to go, now play the Odd Couple theme. I just, when I watch Game of Thrones, I just like to insert my own little music thing. So I got my own YouTube playing in my own head when I watch it. But again, I really enjoyed the back and forth because at this point in time, they still have she's not with him by choice,
Right.
But she's going along with this because at least he's bringing her where she wants to go.
Right. Right.
But
they established that early on because she thinks he's taking her back to King's Landing. He's like, no, I'm taking you to the twins. And so it's in her best interest to go along with him.
Right, exactly, and also, even though she's not thinking this way, she's not really that concerned about her own safety. If she was to take a step back and think about it, there are a few better people you could be with than a guy like the Hound.
Right.
Because he can pretty much take care of business. It's funny how, the show built up to the whole thing with the Hound versus the Mountain. And I kept thinking, there's other face-offs I'd actually be more interested in seeing. I mean, if not for the whole, losing the hand thing, Jamie versus the Hound would have been kind of interesting for me to watch. I would have enjoyed that.
Right.
But anyway, there is still a little bit more to be touched on with Arya and the Hound, but you know what? That's going to get folded into the main course, the key storyline of the episode. what do we call it? Do we just call it Rob and his mom? Do we call it the Red Wedding? I call it the worst wedding party ever.
Well, the wedding was perfectly fine. It was the reception that was the problem.
That's why I said party.
Yeah.
So earlier in the episode, this is where we Pulp Fiction a sucker. Earlier in the episode, Rob and Caitlin were looking over the battle plan to take Casterly Rock, if I recall. It's the much talked about Lannister home and castle. Do we ever see Casterly Rock ever in the series?
Yeah, it gets captured by the Unsullied in season 7.
Okay.
But it was kind of like a letdown. You know.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
Wait, something let us down in a later season? No.
Shocking, I know. It's just like the only problem with season 7 was Casterly Rock not being awesome.
For some reason, I got the Ramones in my head. I don't know why. Anyway, so it's a goal that has both tactical and personal attributes to it, whatever. Unlike earlier strategy sessions, this time he does want to take his mother's advice, considering the outcome that's happened before. Much of their success will be predicated on getting more men from Walder Frye, as well as probably getting it done before reinforcements can arrive. The fact is that this would be such a personal blow at a time when it really is what is fueling their motivation to do this. So they arrive at the Twins, which is, as I said before, it's Walder Frye's castle, accepting his, so sweetly given hospitality. After what I would politely call the increasingly amusing introduction of the Frye daughters and granddaughters.
Now I'm going to correct you one time. Yeah. I promise you. No. It's not Frye. It's Frey.
I'm not saying Frye. I'm sorry.
Because you must be like an Eagles fan. You're thinking of Glenn Frye, but it's Frey.
You know what? Frey. I'll tell you something. This is going to absolve me. You're absolutely right. And and of all things for me to mispronounce, one of the easiest things. Here's why I'm making that mistake, and you actually hit it. And I'm not an Eagles fan. However, watch me tie this in. Watch this, kids. You're going to be impressed. D.B. Weiss was a personal assistant for Glenn Frye.
Ah, okay.
And that was in my head, and I was deciding earlier, do I mention that or not? And I just said, I just say he was a personal assistant in the entertainment, but we don't need to get into Glenn Frye. Who cares? And by not saying it, the name stuck in my head. So now I see Frey in front of me. I'm saying Frye instead of Frey.
But if you say Frye later on, I will not correct you. It's totally fine.
No, that's inexcusable. I'm so proud of myself for finally pronouncing Daenerys' name correctly, because I'm telling you, on every single previous Game of Thrones podcast, I would basically be referring to her as either Khaleesi or Dany, and I'd say, because I know I'm going to mispronounce it. I just know it. It's happened.
And I've heard really weird ways. I mean, first off, to say a weird way to say Daenerys is kind of like a dumb statement, because it's a freaking weird name. But I had a friend who would always pronounce it Daenerys, and I'm like, what are you saying, Daenerys?
I think you were saying, damn your ass.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. The Frey.
Yeah. But to get right back into it, you were talking about a wonderful time, which was when Walder was introducing all of his daughters and granddaughters, and it's an awesome scene.
Oh, there's. I love him, like, not remembering the name of one or being sure about it.
He's like, fine.
yeah, whatever. And then even when then Rob he goes through his sincerest apologies moment, and I would say why they didn't. Well, I guess they did pick up on it. They just were going to let it go because they're there's nothing they can say. I'd say Walder gives his sincerest slow clap to the apology, and then he proceeds to give. We'll be nice again. He's called his evaluation of Talisa, the woman that Rob chose over all the Frey girls there. So it's lovely. He's a darling man. It's little wonder he gets to this actor gets to play lovely, charming characters like this one, the one in Harry Potter. Even Ricky Gervais's, dad in Afterlife. Actually, that one's sweet. That's like sweetness personified compared to all these other characters this dude plays. Anyway, that night, while Rob's men drink and wrestle with each other like idiots do outside the gates of House Frey. You're right. I have to keep catching myself. I instinctively want to say Frye. Wow. House Frey. We have the second wedding in as many episodes, because the previous episode we saw Tyrion and Sansa get married.
Right.
Oh, by the way, I was always wondering at the time, because, speaking as one of those non-book readers, we had heard the phrase red wedding a bunch of times. We had heard it. We didn't know what it meant, but we heard it. And then we get to this thing with Tyrion and Sansa, and we were thinking, oh, it's a wedding. this is going to be it. And then how that wedding goes, which, is, it's not great what happens after. We're thinking, oh, that was a big deal? Why is it red? Because he's drinking all the red wine? Is that it?
Yeah, or the Lannister colors are like, scarlet and gold, and
right.
But yeah, it's funny that you bring that up, because the fact that there was going to be this like butchering going on at this wedding was kind of kept under the radar, just like Ned being executed at the end of near the end of season 1 was kind of kept under the radar and kept out of like the public view by the book readers, and so the fact that red wedding as a term kind of like snuck out there was unavoidable, I guess. But the fact that there was a wedding and the anticipation that of if you heard the term that, oh, maybe this is what something's going to happen at this wedding. Oh, nothing happened. Who knows why people were talking about it? It kind of sets everybody up for the bigness on this one.
I thought it was really smart. And you think, again, if you don't know anything, or if you're a Jon Snow, you know nothing, you go into it and you figure that's got to be the one, because you're dealing with a wedding of, they're both major characters, or one's major, one's going to be a major character, or
right.
a borderline major. She's kind of like on that line in between. Anyway, no. The wedding we're talking about, obviously, is going to be Uncle Edmure and Rosalind Frey. Oh, got it right.
Right.
Who turns out to be quite fetching, and not in the dog running after a stick sense.
So lovely, yeah.
I love that look that Frey gives Rob at the reveal. See, you could have had yourself a hottie after all.
Exactly.
And then you could have saved yourself, this embarrassing public apology, because that's the worst consequence of your vow breaking. Anyway.
Exactly.
So, it's just a wedding reception now. We can just skip to the next episode. Nothing really happens. No, anyway. So the band plays their merry and festive tune, and Caitlin and Uncle Blackfish are remarking on Edmure's change of heart once he saw his bride-to-be, and how and Uncle Blackfish is just going on about how the gods love to reward a fool. I forgot how great a character Blackfish is until I was watching this season. It's like, oh, he's so much fun. I love this guy.
He's really good. No, I agree that the actor is good and the role is good. I mean, it's fun. Oh, yeah.
He turns out to be one of those people you kind of wish you got a little bit more of, but obviously based on the storylines, you weren't going to get too much more of him, at least in the series.
Right.
But, it is what it is. So while discussing how Roose Bolton, he also married a Frey girl. He picked the heaviest one, as Frey had promised to match the girl's weight in silver. That's when Blackfish excuses himself to go take a piss. We might refer to that as the luckiest piss ever.
Now, I have a question for you. At this moment, so Walder Frey, he makes Rob do a humiliating public apology, and Roose Bolton is kind of hanging out with Catelyn, and they're talking about, like wedding stuff and so on. And since you had not read the books, did you have any red flags at this point?
I already didn't trust Bolton from before.
Uh-huh.
So that I'm already going into this not trusting Bolton because of his situation, with Jamie and all that stuff, and what's going on over at Winterfell and whatnot.
Sure.
So I felt, okay, something's gonna happen. I just didn't expect it to be on the scale of what happened. That's what it was like. Basically, it was like, oh.
So I want to just take a brief tangent from the show and talk about the books. When I was reading the books, when I got to the chapter where all this happens, my opinion of Walder Frey and Roose Bolton was that they were ridiculously fun and crazy offbeat characters. And I thought that they would be like the biggest Stark supporters the entire time. I thought Walder Frey is going to be crotchety and crabby throughout all of these books, and Roose Bolton is going to be the creepiest, palest, whispering, leech using guy because he's very odd in the books. And but but it's going to be like just like a big motley crew of unusual characters who are going to be like with the Starks to like the very bitter end. And so I had no idea reading the book what was going to happen. I mean, I was just astounded by how I was taken by surprise. And and there are people who have read the books and they thought, oh no, I never trusted Walder Frey, and I didn't trust Bruce Bolton. He was awful, he was just creepy and so on. I'm like, yeah, but I was snuck in by that because I thought, well, we should expect the upstanding, like super good looking Gaston guys to be like the bad, revealed to be the bad guys,
right.
And therefore like the misfits like Tyrion to kind of like be kind of cool about things. And no, I was busted. So it was a dramatic chapter for me to read.
So it's kind of like they subverted your mental subversion.
Yeah, I was like looking for the subverted trope, and I like fell into the subversion of that trope.
They tricked you one way or the other. So back to the scene. After a little bit of cuteness between Robb and Talisa, that's where Walder Frey, he gets the room's attention by declaring it's now time for the marriage to be made official. The wedding needs a bedding. And going along with the crudity, Robb agrees, to the delight of the crowd, and they're all chanting, to bed, to bed, to bed. And Edmund and Rosalind are carried off to presumably consummate their coupling. Actually,
right.
Well, I wonder, do you think they hit, by the way, because I know what ends up happening to Edmure. Did he get the chance to? Did they get to go to bed before he got?
Yes, yeah. The deal was that Walder wanted Rosalind to become pregnant with a son, and then that son would end up having claim to all of the Tully lands through the normal, claim of succession.
That makes sense. That's what I was just wondering if they let them have a wedding night before they said, okay, now, even though I think they'll hear the screaming, but anyway, or they're going to hear that music because they're going to be wondering, that's kind of an odd song to be playing at a wedding reception.
Right.
But back, this whole custom of the to bed, Talisa finds it an odd one, but the conversation between her and Robb soon shifts to the new life in her womb and how if it's a boy, the name would be Eddard. And right there, that alone should be a bad omen. You know why? Because that means the kid would be named Ned Stark. And Ned Stark and 9th episodes are not a good mix. They don't make it to the 10th.
Yeah. You're right.
Doesn't matter if you're bordering on 50 years old or you're in your first trimester. I don't care. And that's when Caitlin notices that one of Frey's sons, Blackwalder, and yes, I did look up all his names at one point, shuts the doors to the room, and she looks just a little bit more worried because that's when the band starts playing the lovely tune, The Rains of Castamere, which, unlike the other stuff they're playing, maybe not so merry. Outside, we hear Robb's direwolf, Greywind. He's howling, and he's like in that kennel pen thing that they've locked him up in. Which, by the way, that's another really bad sign, because I think normally they wouldn't have locked up the wolf. So again, It's like, what's going along with this? And by the way, can I just say, and maybe it's just the pet owner, animal lover in me, as horrifying as everything is, outside of maybe a certain belly, the thing that hurts me the most watching this episode, or at least the last 10 minutes, is killing the direwolf.
Yeah.
When it looks out from under the... Oh, God.
Yeah, it makes eye contact with Arya before he dies. It's like, oh...
Oh, there's like, okay, just in case you're not out, you're just freaked out and going crazy. We're gonna make you tear up a little too. Yeah, here's how we'll do it. Oh yeah, you kill a dog, thanks.
Yeah.
Good thing I'm not a cat person. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, at that point, the music it's drifting past the castle walls, and that's when the cart driven by the Hound and Arya reach the camp outside. See, converging. Guard stops him, telling the Hound basically, hey, the feast is over, get the fuck out of here. And Arya, she's already popped out of the cart. So she's going to go scamper into, and see what's going on. We'll bounce back into the hall. Caitlin is looking increasingly worried. And like every time they cut to Caitlin, she looks worried. That must be a script. Caitlin looks worried. And that's when Walder Frey, stop myself. Again, he commands the room's attention as he addresses Robb Stark. And by the way, doesn't every time Frey says, "Your Grace," it reeks of the most insincerity of anything ever said on this show. Just
right. What a perfect delivery. Right.
He's so good. So good at being so bad. And that's when Frey is admitting he's been remiss in not giving Robb a proper wedding gift. And that's when Caitlin looks at Bolton, and they have that little exchange of looks. He kind of has that, "oh, well, bye-bye," kind of look in his eyes. And that's when she tugs up his sleeve, and she sees the chainmail underneath. Attire which would be suitable for battle, not really a wedding reception.
Right.
And that's when she slaps the traitorous Bolton, and why did I have to slap my hand? And cries out to Robb, because people wouldn't know what a slap was, apparently. She cries out to Robb because she realizes what's about to happen. And then all of a sudden they should have done a David Chase smash cut to black. No, I'm just kidding. So almost immediate. Imagine everyone's like DVRs or whatever just kind of went on the fritz at that moment.
Wow.
Awesome.
Wow.
But awesome. I'm rewatching the screen froze. I'm like, come on. I know it's about to happen. But almost immediately, Frey's son Lothar, who I guess chose not to hang out with the hill people that night. I'm sorry. Does anybody remember that SNL sketch? Come on. You clearly did.
I do remember Lothar and the Hill People.
Lothar of the Hill
People.
Also, kind of cool. Watching the show. Don't have his name in front of me, but he's been brought up a number of times because that actor. I just saw him on. I just was watching a show from a few years ago called The Bodyguard, but he was in the most recent season of The Crown. He plays the guy who breaks into Buckingham Palace and has a little sit-down tea with the Queen in the middle of the night. It's that same actor. I don't have his name in front of me because I wasn't planning to talk about it. Anyway, what does he do again? Oh yeah, he stabs Talisa to death.
Yep.
And to make it so much more disturbing, the vicious stabs are directly into her belly, and you're just going, "Oh God!" It's that. Didn't see that coming. That was pretty horrible. It's so visceral.
At the times, I know that there were people complained about that going on for like a couple of reasons, but and again, I don't need to like defend or accuse the showrunners of anything, but one of the horrifying things of reading the chapter from Catelyn's point of view is that everyone who dies at the Red Wedding is someone that she knows, and so we know them. And so when Catelyn sees these people, we have been like hanging out with these people throughout Catelyn's chapters for hundreds and hundreds of pages. And so it's a shocking to see characters who are like very rich and well developed and have personalities. And we kind of know. And if you ask me, what would they like for breakfast, I could tell you what they wanted for breakfast because that's George. You always know what people are eating. But so when they die, you're feeling it. And so I think the showrunners really wanted to try to get that through like visually, since we don't have the chance to get into Catelyn's head, the horror of these, because a bunch of random guys die in the background. Catelyn knows them all, but we don't.
Oh, okay, yeah, that would, I could see how that would have a much greater impact on the reader. Wow, cool. So here, as Walder Frey, he gleefully, and everything from this point on is he's done with a certain evil glee. He gleefully looks on. The band, they trade their instruments for crossbows, and they let loose an assault of arrows upon Robb, his men. Even Caitlin is hit by one. And it's like, oh. And then there's that point where you're going, oh, this is a red wedding. Oh.
Oh, the red wedding.
Oh, now I know what the red was. It wasn't wine. It wasn't hair. It wasn't Egret getting marrying Tormund or something, even though I think they're related. I don't know. So, anyway, outside. To give us a little bit of a breather, Arya is making her way through the camp. And I was like, oh, let's follow Arya. Everything will be okay out here. And she's smiling because she sees a group of Stark soldiers. They're celebrating at a table, which is right near those stable kennel pen things. And then all of a sudden, oh, boy, they get slaughtered. So, and as Frey's man, wow, did it again, walks off, she starts to approach again because she can... see and hear the direwolf Grey Wind is howling and clawing at the door, but then she has to hide again. Because soldiers with crossbows, they murder the poor beast. What we were just talking about. Why am I even talking about it again? I'm just going to get sad again. But let's go to Arya, because right now, you can imagine the emotions going on through this girl's head. She's upset, she's angry, she's confused. There's probably a dozen other explosive things going off in her head. But of course, being Arya, she's going to go make her way to the castle now. But, bonk, the hound catches her, bonks her on the head, because it's simply too late to do anything. He carries her off.
Yep.
And again, it's also one of those things where you kind of, it makes you sort of appreciate, in this moment of this chaos and the horrors, you kind of appreciate the hound once again. Because he is still looking out for her. Even though you could say later on, well, he's being practical because, he can go bring her somewhere else and make a few bucks or something.
But so everything about the hound kind of lets you know that he even though he's saving her for mercenary interest, he is kind of saving her for the right reasons as well.
Yes.
Yes.
I
mean, because he could have sold her to the Freys,
Sure.
He could have, but he did not. He chose to save her and get her out of there.
That's a very good point. Back in the hall, Caitlin, she's dragging herself forward under the tables, and Robb is struggling to get up. Or as Frey says, as he motions for his murdering minions to pause, "The King of the North arises." He's so good. As Robb, makes his way to cradle basically his dead wife in his arms. And that's when Caitlin snatches Frey's wife, blade to her throat, pleading with him to spare Robb's life, vowing there will be no vengeance. But hey, guess what? Stark vows don't really mean a heck of a lot, in House Frey. And as for losing his wife, as Frey says, he'll find another.
Yep. It's like really like this is like an inconvenience to him at best.
You kind of, and again, it's one of those things like, how else would you? Did you not see how he introduced all his daughters and granddaughters earlier? Do you think he cares about this woman?
Yeah.
No. He'll find a new piece of strange. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, wow, it's the first time I said that. Anyway, so with Rob's last words being mother, which, is kind of a little bit of a gut buster. Then Bolton guts him. And then he says, and as he does it, he says, "The Lannisters send their regards," which I thought was interesting and, I don't want to say funny, but he's actually passing on a message that Jamie had said to him in a previous episode.
Literally, when Jamie was leaving Harrenhal, Roose is getting ready to go to the north, and Jamie is like, "Oh, make sure to give Robb my regards."
Yeah, I'm pretty certain Jamie didn't think
No,
it was going to be delivered this way. He wasn't aware of this plan.
No, I'm pretty sure. Although it's funny because I have argued with people online, because shocking that I've argued with people online.
No,
that people who were convinced that Jamie thought up the Red Wedding and made up and told Roose Bolton about it when he was at Harrenhal, and I'm like, are you high? I'm like, what are you talking about?
That doesn't make any sense.
Zero sense.
You could have squashed him like a bug, Pat. Like a bug. Anyway, after she wails the grief of a mother who believes she has lost practically her entire family, because at that moment she actually hasn't, but she doesn't know that.
Yeah.
And she does it while she's also taking the time to slash the throat of, Frey's latest wife. I know what her name is, but it's one of those names I can't pronounce. I decided, hey, you know what? You're such an unimportant character, I'm not even going to say your name. I'm just calling you latest wife. It begins with
and I don't even remember her name, so it's totally fine.
It's like juice. It's like juice with joy and use in it. I don't know. That's like the worst description of a name ever. Anyway, she goes silent, and that's when Black Walder just steps behind her and cuts her throat as well. Well, credits run silently. Which
Silent.
I think, yeah. Which I'm assuming they did it so we could all get the giggles out. No. Horrible. And oh, by the way, even though it's not this episode, so the opening minute and a half of the next episode is kind of a continuation of all this. So that first minute of the next episode is pretty horrifying as well. And then the rest of that episode is pretty tepid, comparatively speaking. It's fine. I don't mean tepid. But anyway, this episode, this was the one. It was funny when I was doing the countdown, and this was the episode that appeared, when I went through all the articles, blah, blah, blah. It was the most cited one. And part of me is like, it kind of feels like it has to be that episode. It's not personally my favorite episode of the series, but it's up there. But it's funny, even watching, this must be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to guess this is probably the 5th time I've seen this episode. Yeah, still disturbing and bothers me every single time.
Yeah. Well, it's a really well constructed episode because it's difficult. The show always had to contend with these multiple storylines, and splitting the a little time here, a little time there. And this was a really well put together episode to kind of give us some things. I mean, the Sam and Gilly storyline was not compelling, but it was nice. It had a nice touch to it. John and Bran's storyline had this nice intersection. The Young-Kai one didn't connect to anything, but at least it progressed Danny's storyline in her theater of war going on there. So I felt that it was a good episode of television, even necessarily without having like the Red Wedding, which was like such a crazy event that had like a big like a giant footprint of like psychic dread and gloom across the series. I mean, it really like laid it out.
Absolutely. I mean, when I mentioned that before the recapping, that one of the things I really thought watching it again for a podcast, so I'm watching it a bit more closely for other reasons, and it's kind of what you just mentioned. I love the fact you had multiple storylines that folded and crossed over one another, whether it be the John and Bran storylines or Arya and the Red Wedding storylines, kind of like so they intersected, they converged, and the fact you have two of them happening that way. The Danny one, obviously, see, I called it Danny this time. Yes, it's separate, but as it should be at this point. But it works for what you were just saying, and that's also, again, it's laying the groundwork for where that character is going to be going, not just this season, but for future seasons. So it's important. It's actually as trivial as it might have seemed to some. I think it's really important in a lot of ways. It's not that cool moment for her this season. That happened in that earlier episode when she got the when she got the unsullied.
Yes.
That, by the way, if that's not my favorite moment for her character, it's definitely in the top 3. It's one of my favorite things when they realize that she can speak Valerian and all that. Oh, it's so good. Anyway, I'm going off on other episodes. I'm going to start thinking about. I couldn't believe when I watched the very first episode. I thought it was amazing that her first scene, other than remembering, her brother's a total scumbag. But then when she goes to get into the bath and they tell her, oh, no, because it's burning on, and it doesn't, she just goes in. And like, oh my God, I forgot. They foreshadow that shit all the way here. Very first episode.
They're good. It's really well done. Yeah. And it rewards the rewatch, right? I mean, like when you're rewatching, you're just like, wow, this is cool. This little thing has like a bigger significance going on, and that's like the benefit of the rewatch. But still, it's fun to go back and get those kind of nuggets of things.
For shows like this, it works really well for If it wasn't for the fact that I basically have to mini binge something every week, I would keep watching it. Even though I just did a rewatch of this in 2019, and I should remind myself, no, do you really want to watch those last couple seasons again? but part of me wants to, but I want to see the Mandalorian get his eyes put out. Come on. That's why he wears the helmet, don't you know?
Right. He learned his lesson.
Right. And as far as like my own favorite of this series, I don't know if I even really have one. This is one of them, clearly. I think Blackwater probably stands out as just a brilliant episode from start to finish.
Agreed. Yeah.
I think a lot of great episodes tend to come down to, and you could say that about this one, but I think we just spoke highly of other parts of the episode, so maybe we don't feel that way. I think other episodes, sometimes they come down to that one amazing scene or sequence, even if but doesn't mean the entire episode was like at that level by any stretch of the imagination, like Hard Home. Yes, it's got that amazing scene, but is the whole episode great? It's pretty good.
It takes a while. There are lots of other parts of that episode that are not the whites attacking Hard Home, that are just kind of like you're waiting to get through those parts to get to Hard Home.
Or the thing I just joked about, the Mountain and the Viper. I mean, obviously, that's a great scene and you're building up to it, but it's all about that. Again, I'm not taking away from those. I mean, those are still good episodes on their own way, but that's why I don't consider them to be at the same level as, say, Blackwater is. And maybe I'm going to call it the Red Wedding. Look at that. Maybe the Rains of Castamere. I don't know. But I still think to this day, I think usually the first one that comes to mind is Blackwater. So I think that's my favorite. And even if it may not rank in other people might not have in their top 3 or 4, but I'm thinking, that's a goddamn perfect episode from start to finish. Yeah, that's great.
It's really good. I if anybody ever asked me like what's the best episode of Game of Thrones, I would be hard pressed to say anything other than Blackwater, just because of the way it was structured. It all takes place in one location, and yet we have multiple point of views of what's going on on the episode. So it still has that feeling of a Game of Thrones episode of multiple things happening, but really it's all happening at Blackwater.
Oh yeah, I know back in the day, in the earlier days of this podcast, when Dan had put together a little montage of TV show themes and grabbed lines from different episodes. Here's a line from Breaking Bad here, or Mad Men there. There was a Game of Thrones line, and I believe it was Tyrion yelling something in the Blackwater episode. Of course, I'm drawing a blank on exactly what the line is.
It's probably those are brave men outside our walls. Let's go out and kill them.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
I can't believe that's it.
It's iconic.
That's probably all we had. We had a line from The Shield, and it was amazing. And then no wonder we didn't have the rights to be used in any other country, because we all these copyright issues. Yeah. Anyway, do you have any other thoughts you might want to express on the episode or the series as I mean, I shouldn't ask if you have any other thoughts on the series, because you will always.
I'll just keep talking. But it was, it was a pivotal moment in the books where everybody went like, whoa. And my wife was reading the book ahead of me because we had one copy and she stole it from me, and she was reading it like all night long. And when she got to the Red Wedding, she was very upset that I was not up to where she was because she had nobody to like process her grief with. And I was impressed that the TV show like really they adapted it so well that the non-book reader could have a similar experience, that it was like this like shocking moment that brought all of this stuff up. And I would watch on YouTube people who were watching the show and were like YouTubing about the show, who had not read the books, and they are making predictions, and they are making these like optimistic predictions about like Robb conquering, taking Castle Rock and eventually, getting to King's Landing. And I was just like, I cannot wait to see your YouTube show after this episode. And it did not disappoint. Everybody had this like shell-shocked look on their face afterwards.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, it's powerful TV. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's probably the one that inspires the most reactions from anyone in the history of the series. I would say. I mean, there's definitely great scenes that happen from here and there. A couple of them we've already mentioned. Some maybe not so great, depending how you look at them, or your own personal opinions. But this is the one I think just unified. I don't think there's anyone who watched it was like, all right,
right.
Yeah, whatever.
If somebody if somebody watched this episode and was just like, it was okay. Well, clearly, they didn't really watch the episode.
No, they, like I would say they had it on the background, but how do you even out of the corner of your eye? how do you miss that one? Alrighty. Wow. See, look. See, we were more positive about it. See? People thinking I'm going to be dumping on Game of Thrones.
No, and you're welcome to do it. I mean, again, I respect people who did not like how the show ended, and it didn't end as nicely as I wanted. I have no beef with anything that happened. I just wish that it had not been rushed and they had taken more care with the characters. Yeah.
For me, there are things I like in that season. I personally don't dump on the fireplace one. I think it's fun. I enjoy it. I think there's a lot of fun stuff in that. I think there's a lot of touching things in that one. Do I actually think Jamie and Brienne should have gotten together? No, but because that didn't feel right to me, and then the way she acts after really didn't feel right to me. But I was able to explain that part away. I didn't let that bother me too much. But the whole overall, the long night. I mean, come on. Anyway, sorry. That should have been. I'm sorry. Makes me. I'm getting angry just thinking about it. When you have to have your pompous cinematographer go on interviews later. It's like, oh well, if you reset your TV, it will not set. It's like no.
That was wrong. No, right. No. I agree. No.
Doesn't work that way. And I would be the first to defend you, dude. I would have been the first, but no. And I don't mind something being shot, fairly dark. Better Call Saul is shot with more shadow than light, quite frankly, especially if you watch some of the earlier seasons. I have no problem with that. But I literally could not see things in that episode. I was like, how do I adjust the color and the brightness? I don't know what the hell to do here. I've got a 43-inch TV. It shouldn't be a problem. Anyway. Like, people are watching on their iPads. It's like, no, we're not watching on an iPad, you idiot. Anyway. All right. Okay, so that was a weird way to end the Game of Thrones stuff.
No, I think it's totally fine. I mean, the show ended weirdly. Why not end our discussion of Game of Thrones?
Exactly. Like, all of a sudden you veered off talking about a cinematographer from that episode. But here's the thing: if you mention Game of Thrones cinematographer, you already know which one I'm talking about. You know which one it is. Which is a shame because there's so many things that are shot beautiful. Like even the Hound and Mountain face-off in the final episode. Oh, that looks gorgeous. It looks like a painting come to life. It's so beautifully shot. Anyway, it's like, you come to shoot it like this? Anyway. All right, so back to the podcast and the ending part of this. So let us look back at the countdown so far. You might not even know what's been going on in this countdown.
No. I listened to you talk to Jack Gladfelter last time, so I have heard the countdown. So
you've heard one. Okay.
So there.
Also, you know what I'm about to do. So this is where I make everyone sit through the entire countdown. So let's go. And I also try to find my iPhone, which is across the room, without falling out of my chair with my bad foot. All right, make sure I get this all queued up. So professional here on this podcast. Here we go. All right, so this is the part where I go through the countdown, where, in case you haven't been listening, we've done 20 of these. So number 20 was House's Head, which was an episode of House from Season 4. Number 19 was The Getaway, the finale of Season 4 of Dexter. Number 18, Out of Gas, which was one of the stellar episodes of Firefly.
The best, yeah.
That's why I was on the list. Number 17, 407, Proxy Authentication Required, a fantastic episode of Mr. Robot. Number 16 was the Miximuno, the Season 2 finale of Hannibal. Number 15 was Hitting the Fan, an episode from Season 5 of The Good Wife. Number 14, we mentioned it earlier, was Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose from Season 3 of The X-Files. Number 13 was Bloody Harlan, the Season 2 finale of Justified. Number 12 was Crossroads Part 2, the Season 3 finale of Battlestar Galactica. Number 11 was, good one, This Extraordinary Being from Watchmen. And number 10, as just mentioned, was the season 1 finale of Deadwood, which was sold under Sin. And kids, you just listened to us talk about number 9, which was obviously Rains of Castamere, Game of Thrones. So did I even write down what number 8 is, or did I actually forget to put that down? Well, I can do it by memory. What episode is it? Oh, it's the finale. Okay. And anyway, coming in at number 8 on the greatest TV drama episodes of all time, it is going to be... I never can time this with the fucking cymbal crash, right? Come on. It's going to be Two Cathedrals, the season 2 finale of The West Wing. And joining me for that podcast, she's been here once before, but she won't have Dan as a safety net here. It's going to be Colleen of the Jay and Jack. Colleen.
She's the best, family. Yes.
And, you know, this may be much like the X-Files. I'm going to say she probably knows, no, not probably. I am positive she knows The West Wing better than me, because I've only seen the series once through, but I am doing a selected rewatch now. I've actually semi-randomly picked like 17 episodes I'm watching between now and when we do the podcast. So I'll try to get my brain into the world. It's a perfect week to be watching The West Wing, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't have timed it too much better than that. Actually, if I'd gotten this a week done earlier, then we could have done that episode this week. Anyway, I guess whatever. So instead, we had the Red Wedding. Perfect. Anyway. No, there's been an interesting bit of timing with the episodes. I mean, the Hannibal one came out around Thanksgiving. You know, Dexter was around Halloween. I was like, oh, it's weird how the time is kind of worked out nicely. Anyway. All right. This is the part where we do the wrap-up. Oh, Pat, is there anything you'd like to, even if it's your own marvelous Twitter feed, anything you'd like to plug or promote or speak highly of or whatever?
No, not the moment. When Game of Thrones was on the air, the last 2 seasons, I was writing essays and things for the Watchers on the Wall website, and have not been doing any of that. But next year, I think House of the Dragon is going to air, which is the next Game of Thrones spin-off type show.
Right.
And so I probably will be writing stuff for them, hopefully. It depends how creative I feel. But so if anybody wants to go to watchersonthewall.com, they can read the stuff that I wrote about the last few seasons of Game of Thrones. Most of it was me going, this is what I think is going to be happening, and it would be wrong. It would be like uniformly wrong. But if only the showrunners had read my stuff, perhaps the season would be better. But yeah, people can follow me on Twitter. My just look for Patman23 and say that you heard me on the Serious TV Drama Podcast, and I'll know exactly how that happened.
That's never going to happen. Aren't you the one who would write pieces where you basically find a way to almost like what if style, like connect Game of Thrones to like all these other kind of fantasy universes, like Ash and the Evil Dead is.
I did do that when I was watching Ash versus the Evil Dead. Every episode, I would try to connect Ash versus Evil Dead, the Evil Dead universe, to like The Walking Dead, and to Game of Thrones, and to Harry Potter. I mean, that was fun. I mean, that was like a fun thing.
All right.
But yeah, I did do that.
Awesome. Okay, let me get our little thing out of the way here. So, if you enjoyed this podcast, and I forced it to be 2 hours plus, I don't care. Guess what? You'll enjoy hanging out on our Facebook page as well. It's the Serious TV Drama Podcast page. Like the page and join the conversation about shows. Hey, you can talk about Game of Thrones there if you like. Just be aware that Dan will probably say some smart-ass thing. But other than him, we can talk about it. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, where you can subscribe to our feed as well and rate and review us there. Apparently you can find us on Stitcher, but I don't think anybody ever does. But you can find us probably a couple dozen other places. But if you really want to check shit out, go to stvdpodcast.podbean.com, where you can find all 298 of our podcast will be there. Ooh, number 300 is coming. Anyway, like it's going to be anything special. It will. I have stuff in mind. I have plans. Probably won't do them, but I have plans. And finally, you can also follow us on Twitter. Our handle there is at STVD Podcast. That's STVD as in Serious TV Drama. All right, one of these days I'm going to give my own Twitter handle on this thing. I never do. I don't know why. Who cares? Anyway, Pat, thank you so much for being here, being patient. I know it's a little later than we expected, but I guess I should have expected it. I think the first 10 on this countdown, everything averaged about an hour and a half. And I think with the final 10, because my decision is I want to talk about the series a bit more, because these are I figure the top 10 should be like the upper echelon of TV. So these are going to be broadened out to be more in the 2 hour zone. So I'm just going to have to get used to that, I think.
Well, I mean, you're the one who pays, because as far as I can tell, you have to stay up and then edit this thing, right? So
that's true.
Yeah,
and also literally, because I just realized on the editing site, I only have an hour and 45 minutes of time paid for there, so I actually have to buy more before I can edit.
Oh, no.
Good times. Whatever. I'll add it to the list of, veterinary bills and foot bills. Anyway. All right. So with that said, Pat, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a blast talking to you. And you know what? I'm going to spare the audience, because I was considering singing the Rains of Castamere at the end of this podcast. But looking at the time, even though I got to say the lyrics are in front of me, I'm kind of tempted. But and who are you? No, I'm not going to do it. All right. No.
Fair enough.
But instead, and again, as I seem to forget every single time I do this podcast, I don't tell the person who's co-hosting in advance that I do this. I do the good nights, and then I let you have the last word. So good night, Pat. Good night to everybody out there. And if you'd like, Pat, you can have the last word.
All right. Well, the last word will be, good night. But everyone should listen to the next episode, because Colleen Gladfelter is so wonderful.
Aww. Shh. Now that Pat's gone, I'm going to sing it anyway. So, a 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3. And who are you? The proud Lord said that I must bow so low. Only a cat of a different coat, that's all the truth I know. In a coat of gold or a coat of red, a lion still has claws, and mine are long and sharp, my lord, as long and sharp as yours. And so he spoke, and so he spoke, that Lord of Castamere. But now the rains sweep o'er his hall, with no one there to hear. Yes, now the rains sweep o'er his hall, and not a soul to hear.